Welkom allemaal bij deze expertcall over het kopen van een huis in Spanje, maar dan vooral de legal side. And Alex is also already here. Alex is English, British, so we're gonna do this in English. So welcome, Alex. Very nice of you to join us today.
Thank you for inviting me on.
You're calling in from Marbella, I understood.
Yeah.
And the sun is back in the Costa Blanca as well, which is nice. This is the Spanish view normally. Today we mainly are going to talk, because you're a lawyer, you're from my lawyer in Spain. So we're going to talk about the legal side of buying a house, of course.
Okay, well, good afternoon, everyone, and I'm really glad to be here. And thank you to Nicolene for organising this. Just to tell you a little bit about myself. My parents moved to Spain in 1981, and they moved to Fuengirola in Malaga. And I went to an international school to start with. I was like 8, 9 then, and they saw that I wasn't learning any Spanish, so they then put me in a Spanish school. And within 6 months, I was fluent. So if you're thinking of bringing over children, the Spanish schooling system is quite good. Or international schools are very good as well. But I really learned my Spanish when I went to Spanish school, and that helped me, helped me to get to where I am now. I finished high school here in Spain, and I went back to university to England, where I studied law with European legal systems, and I spent a year at the University of Salamanca as part of the Erasmus program, which is great fun. And then after doing some traveling and that, I started working as a lawyer in the southwest of England, in Exeter, in 1999. And then as a fluent Spanish speaker, lots of Spanish cases or clients came to me asking me about Spanish matters. And eventually I moved back to Spain in 2003. Came back with my wife, and we bought a plot of land and built a house, which was quite exciting. And then we brought up 2 children here in Spain. I love Spain. It's a great country. And I think you'll, the weather is great. And the lifestyle is good as well. So, Nicolene, just help me out on this, moving this forward presentation. So that's a little bit about myself, and of course,
Sorry, I'm back for just 1 second. There's I normally do it with my arrow to the right.
There we go. Got it.
There you go. Yeah.
There you go. Okay. Thank you very much. Right. So when I came back to Spain in 2003. I was working for a Spanish law firm, and then I re-qualified as a Spanish lawyer. So I'm now English qualified and also Spanish qualified. And we act for basically international clients, buying, selling and inheriting property in Spain, doing business in Spain, and also helping clients move to Spain and obtain their EU residency or their visas. So why Spain? Well, I think you probably know this already, but it is the California of Europe. We have more than 360 days of sunshine at some place in Spain. The culture and the gastronomy and history of Spain is amazing. We have 65 different wine regions, for example. We have more than 17 autonomous regions. So people have mentioned in the poll that Nicole prepared, they wanted Costa Blanca. Costa Blanca, that is the Valencian region. Costa Brava is in Catalonia. And each region has its own taxes for purchasing and inheriting, etc. So that's quite important, which areas you buy. We were delighted to see the report from CaixaBank recently. If you have a look on the My Law in Spain website, we've got it in our blog there. And they're expecting house prices to rise in 2024 in Spain between 4.4% and 5%, which is phenomenal. And they're looking at 2.8% for 2025. And Spain's employment prospects and the growth of the GDP is nearly up to 3% for this year. So Spain's doing very well financially. And so it's a good, safe property market to invest in, and also a good place to come. But of course, you've got to do your homework. Okay, it's not just a there isn't just a market now for property for one nationality of clients, which there may have been 20, 30 years ago. Now it is truly an international market dominated by all types of nationalities. So, I spoke to marketing director for Taylor Wimpey, big builder here recently, and 10, 15 years ago, he would have told you that 60% of their clients were British, and the 40% were from around the rest of the world. Now he'd probably said it's 20% British, and the other 80% is from around the world. So it is truly an international market. And from what you've seen there are some great promising market returns on property. But also, I think Nicolene will agree with me, if you're coming to Spain to live or buying a property, you're actually investing in your lifestyle. You want to get away from the northern European rain and the grey skies, and you want to live outside, al fresco dining, and enjoy the great food and wine here in Spain. So if you are considering moving to Spain, either to set up in business, to buy a property, to rent out, it's just important to kind of have a look at these points to start off with. What to consider. Are you going to buy a property to use it for yourself, or are you going to buy it for a business? And if you're going to buy it for a business, then it might be better to actually take some tax advice and maybe consider buying it in a company. I'd always say, generally, if you're going to primarily use the property in your own name, that you buy the property in your own name. So if you're going to use it personally, buy the property in your own name. If you're going to rent it out, then maybe consider a business, because you can deduct some more costs. And then what you can do is you can set up a company here which can be owned by the shareholders, and that Spanish company buys the property here. But of course, as EU citizens, and you've got your own company, then you can actually use that EU company to purchase property here. We would apply for a Spanish tax number for that company, and then the company can actually buy a property here. And as I mentioned, because we've got those 17 autonomous regions, the taxes, the purchase tax, what we know as the transfer tax, varies from region to region. So, for example, if you buy a second-hand property in the Canaries, the transfer tax there starts at 6.5%. And if you buy a brand new property in the Canaries, the tax on that is 7%. Whereas if you come over to the mainland, anywhere in the mainland, a brand new property is 10%. And if you're buying a brand new property and it's being built and you're paying in stage payments, you actually pay that 10% included in those stage payments. So typically a brand new property, if it's typically, I'd say 70% is payable once the property is completed, and 30% during the process of the build. And you would pay 10% transfer tax, 10% VAT on that, IVA as it is known in Spain, and then you pay the stamp duty once the property has been completed and you complete the purchase at the notary. So it is important when you're thinking about buying a property to put your budget together and consider what type of property you're going to buy. Brand new, second hand, or is it going to be for a business use? Do I need a company? Do I have money in a company already? And I want to use that money to lend money, for example, to a Spanish company to buy the property. And also think about who the shareholders will be. Are there any tax advantages in your country now whereby you can donate that money to your children or grandchildren and they buy the property in your names? In Spain, we have what's known as the life interest. So mum and dad could buy, if it's just a holiday home, they could buy the property in the children's names and they have a life interest in the property. But it's important to take local tax advice in your country to make sure that that doesn't trigger any unnecessary taxes for you there. So, preparing to purchase. As far as lawyers are concerned, we're all about preparation. You know, going through the points that I mentioned before. But when it comes to buying a property, and Nicolene will back me up on this. You know, you're looking for location, and as mentioned in the polls, you're looking for a great property, great views, good price, sometimes close walking distance to the town, other times you don't mind a drive. So before you even start looking at properties, I do believe it's important to find the area that you like. I had some clients come to see me today, and they're thinking of moving to Spain in 2028, which is so there's a lot of forward planning there. But what I did say to them is, if you've only been to Spain a few times, come and explore the different regions. Come and explore the regions at different times of the year, because sometimes some regions are much quieter in the winter compared to the summer. So have a look at the regions in the different times of the year, winter, summer, autumn and spring, and find out which region you like the most. And then obviously this is when that would be with the estate agent, and then we would come in to help you. So I would always recommend that you appoint an independent lawyer. We will send you terms of business, a letter confirming what our fees will be, and we'll also calculate the cost approximately for you. And we set out that budget for you. If you want to borrow monies to buy a Spanish property, typically you can borrow up to 70%. So of course you're going to need a deposit of the other 30% and the costs. And we normally would recommend that clients put in place what we call a power of attorney. That's a document that authorizes us to act for you only in Spain. And with that power of attorney, we can basically apply for your NIEs, which are your Spanish tax numbers, which you'll need, and we can open a bank account for you. We don't have free banking in Spain, so I'd only recommend that you open the bank account when you're close to finding a property, or if you said to me, look, Alex, we really would like a Spanish property now, a Spanish bank account now, let's open it up. And typically we can open bank accounts with the powers of attorney, and the bank will ask for your tax returns, the last tax returns, the NIEs, and typically they would then open the bank account for you. The buying process is really quite quick, especially for resale properties. So it is important that you do that preparation, which I've got in that slide there, because once you find a property, you'll put in an offer, and once that has been accepted, the estate agent will ask you to put a deposit down on the purchase, and then agree a time frame for completion. So if you need a mortgage, you've got to play catch up. So it's always best to talk to a mortgage broker before you offer on a property. Okay, so get your lawyer in place as well. Get your NIs. Be ready. Get buyer ready. And also, when you're making an offer for a property, if you say to the seller or the agent that you've got a lawyer in place, you've got your NIs, you've got the mortgage, you're ready to go, that puts you in a very strong position when it comes to negotiation. Of course, everyone would prefer a cash buyer, and that's sometimes not always possible, but if you are, then you're in a good position. So you can typically, what we do is once an offer has been accepted, and before you make that offer, I would suggest you ask the estate agent how long the property has been on the market for, if the seller has rejected or accepted any offers, and why are they selling, just to give you a bit more information about the seller and their circumstances, and then hopefully you can use that to your advantage. And then once you submit your offer to the estate agent, that's then accepted. The estate agent will typically send you a reservation contract for you to sign and pay a deposit. And that deposit can be anywhere between 3,000 and 15,000 euros. And I'd always recommend that your independent lawyer reviews that reservation agreement before you sign it, because you might want to make the purchase subject to a survey. A survey is when we would arrange for an architect to visit the property to ensure that the house isn't suffering from any damp, or there's no major issues, for example, with the air conditioning, etc. So we could make it subject to survey. You could also make it subject to a mortgage if you required a mortgage, or subject to a satisfactory valuation. Typically, sellers won't like that They won't like the fact that you subject it to a mortgage or a valuation, but we would always try and negotiate at least a time period for you to be able to organize the bank valuation of the property and the acceptance from the bank in a window of time, so that they don't sell it to someone else, because you have to pay for your valuation and it takes time to arrange that. Typically, a week to 2 weeks, and then maybe another week for the bank to come back and give you your offer in principle. So, very important, you get prepared, you make the offer, that gets accepted, your independent lawyer reviews the reservation contract, and then you pay the monies over, you keep proof of that payment, and then you've agreed the time frame in there. So typically you would say, pay 6,000 euros today, and carry out your due diligence in 4 weeks' time. In 4 weeks' time, exchange contracts, and then complete anywhere between 4 and 6 weeks later. So generally, the buying process is quite quick, and we can complete the purchase, between 4 and 12 weeks. A little bit longer if you have a mortgage, and also if you're buying a country property, a rural property, we would carry out additional searches for you there at the local town hall. Typically, we would want what we call as a CNI, it's a Certificado de No Infracción Urbanística. So it's a non-infraction certificate from the town hall confirming that the property has been built according to planning permission, and the sellers have their property documents all in order. Once you've carried out your due diligence and you've set those dates, we would then prepare a property purchase contract. We would carry out our legal report. We carry out searches on the property to make sure there's no debts. Any debts that there are would come off the final purchase price. And then we would sign the purchase contract. And typically then you would pay the balance of 10% of the purchase price. So you put 6,000 euros, 3,000 to 6,000 euros down to reserve the property, and then the balance of 10% in 4 weeks' time. And if you pull out of that purchase, for example, because you can't get your valuation or you can't get your mortgage, then you would lose that 10%. Okay? And we're not in the business of clients losing money. We want them to basically buy safely, securely, and buy that property without any major issues. So that's why it's so important to get prepared, especially with finances, and then also to make sure that the reservation agreement covers situations whereby that deposit may need to be paid back to you if there was an issue with the property. 9 times out of 10, the property will be absolutely fine. There'll be no legal issues. But there is 1 in 10 cases where you find that there's something to be added or something to be changed. For example, in Spain, we have what's known as the land registry and the catastro registry. The land registry issue a land search, like in writing, and the catastro registry issue a plan of the property. And sometimes, they don't always talk to each other. So sometimes the catastro may be updated because that's used to pay taxes, local town hall taxes, and the land registry only gets updated if an owner takes positive action to update the deeds. So we find that sometimes there might be a discrepancy between the catastro and the land registry, and we would want the seller to fix that at their cost. An example of that would be, for example, someone's built a swimming pool and hasn't added it to the deeds. So we would carry out our due diligence with exchange contracts, and then we prepare for completion. Completion takes place at the notary. The buyer's lawyer and the seller's lawyer would send information about the buying parties and selling parties and details of the property to the notary. The notary prepares the deed. We agree the figures, so it would be the purchase price less any taxes, any debts. We'd hold back some monies for any debts. If there was a mortgage to be cancelled, we'd hold back notary and land registries for that. But typically, you would then transfer the money into a Spanish bank account, and we either complete with a banker's draft, which is a check, or we do bank transfers on the day. And Spain's a little bit backwards in that respect. I'd say 80% of purchases are completed using bankers' drafts. So we would agree the figures with the selling party and pick up a check. Bank transfers can be arranged, but basically, we're signing the deed at completion. What tends to happen is I give the selling party or the seller or the agent or their lawyer a check, and in exchange we get the keys. That's basic completion at the notary. We'd also arrange for you we'd put in place home and contents insurance for you, so the property is insured from the date of completion. So I talked about the costs of the transaction earlier, and important to budget. So the purchase tax, for example, in Andalusia is 7%, whereas up in the Valencian region it's 10%, Catalonia it's 10%. Notary fees vary. Notary fees and land registries, I'd say up to 0.5% each, and they are estimated costs. So we never have an exact figure for that, but we estimate that how much that may be. We carry out land searches in English, so I'm afraid, Nicoline, the land registry here doesn't issue land searches in Dutch yet, but they do issue them in English and Spanish, and we apply for them, and we get the basically description in Spanish of the property, and then a description in English of the property, which I think is amazing. And you can basically, we send that to a client and say, look, this is the description of the property you're buying. What do you think? Is that correct? And obviously we would check that that's correct as well, comparing land register and cadastro. The power of attorney that I talked about earlier, you can sign that in your home country, or you can sign it in Spain. And that's a document that authorizes us to act for you in Spain. So with that, we can apply for your NI number, we can open up a bank account, we can sign the insurance for the property for you, and we can complete the purchase, pay the taxes, and register that in your name. It's always best, I'd say, if you're going to give a power of attorney, give it to your independent lawyer. They've got insurance in place. Give it to a trusted professional. Don't give it to an estate agent or a friend of a friend, or a gestor. I'd say give it to someone actually who specializes in property work. Legal fees typically are 1% of the purchase price plus tax. The tax at the moment is 21%. Then we have the NIs. We charge €95 because they have to be collected from the police station. And we'd always recommend that you have a Spanish will. Spanish will for Spanish assets, and a home will for the assets that you have in your home country, and that they work together. Okay. Now, those people who want to move to Spain, and I'm very conscious we've got a lot of people here from Europe, but there may be other countries represented as well. But generally speaking, if you are a European citizen and you're moving to Spain and you're intending to spend more than 3 months in Spain, then you have to apply for EU residency, okay? And the requirements are quite straightforward. You have to register on the padrón, which is the local census. We call that the empadronamiento. If you're going to rent first before buying, renting before buying is always good. I would always recommend that whoever the adults are who will be renting the property, they're both recorded on that rental contract, and there's a specific clause from the sellers authorizing those tenants to register at the town hall on the padrón, so that you can register on the padrón and get your EU residency. And depending on your age, then you would need private medical insurance or basically public insurance, which you can get from your home country. You can get a certificate from your home country and use that in Spain. And of course, a clean criminal record certificate. Those are the general requirements for EU residency. One of the issues we come across with in Spain is, Spanish bureaucracy sometimes is not consistent. So different town halls, different police stations have different requirements as far as monies are concerned. But typically speaking, if you were looking at an EU residency for 2 people, then you're looking at needing €15,000 in a bank account, and that can be basically in a bank account here in Spain, or it can be in your home bank account. For those of you who are not EU residents, then if you're moving to Spain, then you apply for the non-lucrative visa. That's a visa that allows you to live in Spain, but not allowed to work. Of course, if you're married to, if you are an EU citizen and married to a non-EU citizen, the non-EU citizen can apply for residency once you have your your Spanish residency. And then I mentioned the golden visa. The golden visas are on their way out, but that was again for non-EU residents. If you bought a property of 500,000 euros, you could basically apply. You could obtain residency that way. It had to be in the name of one person with no debts. And the digital nomad visa was introduced again because Spain wants to attract digital nomads, people kind of from outside Europe on high wages moving to and working from Spain. But I guess most of you are EU residents. So if you move to Spain, just remember more than 3 months here, then you have to apply for Spanish residency, and you need to register on the Padron. You need a Spanish address, private or public medical insurance, and a clean criminal record certificate, and monies in the bank. Okay, that is the residency. And that basically, Nicolene, brings me to the end of the presentation. So I see there's lots of questions coming in. So with your guidance and Google Translate, I'm happy to answer any of those questions that come through.
I think all the questions have been in English, so it's quite easy. But I will help you out anyway.
Okay.
Somebody's asking if you buy a house in Spain. We talked about the wills.
Yeah.
And you say it's important to have a testament, like a will in Spain itself, or is a testament like a will, from your native country? And tax-wise, is it more economical to give your inheritance the right of use for tax reasons? I don't really get that question.
Yeah, I think I understand that. So in Spain, yeah. So the property options you've got are obviously, Nicolene, you moved to Spain and you bought the property in your own names, which is the right thing to do because you're moving to Spain and living here. But for example, if mum and dad want a Spanish property and they're not going to move here and they want their, say, children to inherit it, etc., then they can buy the property. The legal title is in the name of the children, so long as they're over the age of 18, and a life interest is in the parents' name. And from a Spanish tax point of view, that works quite well because when the mum and dad with their life interest die, then the property is automatically inherited without any inheritance tax here in Spain by the legal owners of that property. Okay, but of course you can. So that those are the options that you can put in a will, and actually when you buy a property. So we talk to clients a lot about ownership options before they buy the property. Are you going to use it? Are you going to move to Spain? If you're going to move to Spain, I'd always say buy it in your own name. But is it just going to be a holiday home? Have you got children over the age of 18, etc.? Fine. Well, maybe consider buying the property with them. They have the legal title and you have a life interest. But also, what's changed a lot in recent years in Spain is the inheritance tax. So inheritance tax used to be quite punitive, and up until last year in the Costa Blanca, the allowances weren't so good. But now the allowances in the Costa Blanca, for example, are more generous. So you'll end up paying, if you leave the assets to your children, direct heirs, then there'll be very little inheritance tax. But if you left it to your sister or cousin, they would pay more inheritance tax. So it's important, to think about, if I'm going to buy this property, who might I leave it to as well? You might not care. You might just be happy, that the Spanish state gets the insurance, gets the inheritance tax when you pass on. But it's a conversation to be had.
Right. It also, like the whole, what I understood from the inheritance tax is also it's a political thing, which can change also when the politicians change in a comunidad, no?
Yeah. So you're absolutely right. So we had just the example of Andalusia. In Andalusia, if I left an asset to my children, they could only inherit 16,000 euros. And then after that, they would pay tax. Right. That 16,000 euros went up to 175, then 250. And we had a change of government, and it's now gone up to €1,000,000, and then a 99% discount on the tax. Right. So as far as Andalusia is concerned, there's virtually no inheritance tax. And that applies also to the Costa Brava, to the Valencian region. So we've got, if I leave assets to my direct heirs, say to my daughters, my children, they've got an allowance each of up to 100,000 euros. And then they've got a 99% discount too on the inheritance tax. Right. But a few years back, that discount, well, actually last year, that discount on the inheritance tax was only up to 50%. And we had like you said, we had a change of government in the Valencian region last year.
Yeah. Which is in some cases good news.
Yeah.
Regarding houses, if you buy a house or you want to buy a house and the seller accepts your offer, can you have 4 to 6 months time for the house transfer, or is that maybe too long?
Yeah, I mean, you've got to negotiate that up front with the seller. Okay, so we've just exchanged contracts on a property for someone. They're buying in Almeria. The sellers are German, and they are going to move. They've been there for quite some years, and they need time to find another property. So we're going to complete by the end of March. So it's something that if you want a long period of completion, that basically, you've got to agree that up front. But normally it's like 6 to 12 weeks. So it is quite fast. Right. What you might find as well, if you want to go for a longer or delayed completion, the seller might ask you for more than 10%. Okay, right. So they might ask you for 20 or 30%.
Security. Yeah. All right. So do lawyers in Spain also check the risk of what happens if something happens to your house, that you have to right to rebuild it? So if something is wrong, like in Holland, we have that people do inspection of the building, that everything is solid, whatever. And in Spain, it's not as common, I think, as in Holland. But if there's something really wrong with the house that you bought, how does that work?
Yes, it's a great question. So I would always recommend, apart from say if you're buying a brand new property, I'd always recommend that clients, buyers, arrange a survey, which we can do. So we would send an architect around to the property to measure the property, to inspect it, see if it's suffering from any damp, if the roof's okay, what the humidity levels are, etc. Check out the air conditioning units. So we would commission an architect to carry out a survey. We would not be responsible for the contents of that, the architect would be, but you're looking at anywhere between €600 and €1,500, depending on how much information or detail you want in that. But I think, if you're buying a second-hand property, which has been standing for some time, I'd always recommend a survey. Yeah.
Right. Okay. And can you, as a lawyer, explain the difference between a gestor in Spain and a lawyer in Spain?
Yeah. Okay. So, for example, I'm registered with the College of Lawyers here in Malaga as an abogado. So I'm qualified abogado, and we have professional liability insurance. So through our College of Lawyers, we have insurance of up to €1,000,000. Okay. So if something went wrong, touch wood, nothing usually does go wrong. But if something went wrong, you could claim against us for up to €1,000,000. Gestors don't have that. Gestors are not lawyers. They are merely people that they're kind of sometimes professional administrative people that might help you maybe apply for an NI number, or they might help you change your car registration from your Dutch plates over to the Spanish plates. Or they might help you change the paperwork on a car, but they're not qualified to really help you on the conveyancing side. Or I say they're not qualified. They may be qualified, but they don't have the insurance or the expertise that
They're
maybe
not
a
official.
specialist lawyer will have.
Yeah.
A gestor is a general administrative person. But of course, gestors, there are some good gestors out there. There's some bad gestors. But we have had clients who come to us and use the gestor for purchase before, and it wasn't a good ending on that one because the gestor was a little bit out of depth. It just depends on the gestoria. But generally, I'd say always kind of use a specialist conveyancing lawyer, so a specialist property lawyer, to buy that property for you.
Yeah, and I can say from my own experience, it's a very good one to have a good lawyer on your side because things are pretty different here in Spain compared to Holland. In Holland, when you buy a house, normally everything is okay, checked, and what's on paper is what you're gonna get. And in Spain, before we bought this house where we have Casa Colina now, we did like a bid on 2 other houses. And so we were completely in love, and I was already imagining the decoration and rebuilding and whatever. But like the papers were not in order. They built without permits, or they had no woonbaarheidsverklaring. I don't know the word in English for that. I'm sorry. So it's very, very important. I think with such an investment that you're gonna make, you need a lawyer, especially in Spain, to check the cadastre, to check the papers, to check the measurements. Even the measurements sometimes differ from the cadastre to everything. I mean, we had, I think, 3 plans with different measurements. So yeah, it's really important that you do this well and that you maybe invest a little bit more, but you're solid and you know that the investment is a true investment and not something that you're going to regret.
Absolutely, Nicole. So, I mean, what we typically want to see is we want to see the land registry and the catastro and the deeds all matching up, so it's the same square meters. And sometimes that's not always possible because, for example, you might, in the catastro, it might say, a porch, a covered porch, of say 20 square meters, and in the land registry, it would say a covered porch of 10 square meters. And that the reason why they do that is that when they calculate the square meters, for the land registry and for planning permission, porches get a 50% discount on the square meterage. So it's important to go through that. But you're absolutely right. If it's got a swimming pool, it's got to be registered. Now, I've seen some of these questions, Nicoline, and one of the questions is like, if I move to Spain, etc. This is a very important point to bear in mind. The tax year in Spain runs from January to December. And if you spend more than 183 days in Spain, then you become a Spanish tax resident. And you'll pay tax in Spain on worldwide assets and income. So if you, for example, sold your property in Holland on the 1st of January and moved to Spain on the 2nd of January, and you've made a profit on the sale of your Dutch property, you become a resident here. In Spain, they will want you to submit a tax return for the year that you become a tax resident. And if you've made a gain, because in Spain we pay tax on the sale of our Spanish property, if we make a gain, they could ask you to pay tax here. Okay, so how to avoid that? So basically, if you move to Spain tomorrow and bought a property, and if you haven't spent 183 days here, there's not 183 days left this year. You're not a tax resident here, so you don't have to worry about that. But for example, let's just say you sold your property in March next year, and then you wanted to move to Spain. I would say just delay the move to Spain until, say, the 1st of August or 1st of July. Once the 183 days have passed, so you're not here for 183 days, so the Spanish tax authorities don't charge you capital gains tax on the sale of your property in your home country.
Yeah, but Alex, as well, I think, right, there is like a agreement between both countries that you will never pay double tax, but you have to pay the tax in Holland and you have to pay the tax in Spain, and then you have to make sure you're going to get it back from someone, right?
Yeah, exactly. So there's a double tax treaty between Spain and Holland. So if you sold shares Well, if you're renting a property in Holland, you may have to pay, and you're a resident here, you probably pay tax in Holland and then declare that here. But when you're moving your main residence, Spain does tax you on that, and there isn't a double. That's not covered by the double tax treaty, as far as I'm aware. So you just have to be careful about that. And the best advice I can give you is, if you're making a gain on the sale of the property in your home country, don't become a tax resident in Spain in that year. So don't spend 183 days here.
Right. That's the easiest way anyway. Yeah, I understand. All right. There's one more question about someone who wants to buy a house with the surplus value of our home when selling in the Netherlands. Our parents want to contribute to something to the house. Is it wise to invest this in the property, or is it better to put this on an account? The question is whether there is any advantage in investing it because it has been obtained.
Okay, so that's a good question. It throws up, various points. If you're a tax resident in Spain, so you're living here for 183 days, and your parents give you the money, then you've got to declare that donation. And depending on the region, you may or may not pay tax. If you have not come to Spain yet and you're not a tax resident, then what you can do is your parents can give you the money in Holland or your home country, and there may be tax there payable, but there may be donation tax or gift tax there you'd have to be aware of. Or what we can do is what I kind of touched upon earlier, is that, let's just say you buy a property for 200,000 euros and your parents put 100,000 euros in and you put 100,000 euros in. They could buy a life interest in the property and you could have the legal title. So that could work as well. But I say, it depends on your personal circumstances and where you are in your buying process. So whether you receive the money donated to you in your home country, will you pay tax on that? If you're a tax resident here, then you could potentially pay tax depending on the region, or they could invest in the property directly. Right.
All right. Okay. This is also always very important, and sometimes it's a bit all these numbers and lots of things to think about, I think, but really important stuff. But luckily there are people like you, Alex, who can help you out, because I think I've seen and I've lived it's important for these kind of things to not just to go on and do it, but just to have some information up front to make sure that you take the steps in the right order.
Yeah, the tax residency is 183 days in Spain. 183.
So it's a little bit more than half a year. That's the way I remember.
Yeah, right? and Nicoline, you're absolutely right. So that's why, estate agents are all about location, but we're all about preparation. So, prepare for your move to Spain, prepare to buy. When will you sell, and what taxes will you pay? Prepare your budget. Get everything ready, and then you won't have any surprises.
Yeah. Very, very true. Well, thank you so much, Alex. I think these are questions.
There's a lot of the information we've talked about, Nicoline, is on our YouTube channel. So we've got the My Law in Spain YouTube channel, and we've got on our website, we've got useful information on the right-hand side, and we've got PDFs that people can download. So you've got the buying costs there for all, buying in all different regions of Spain. We've got the taxes set out there. And lots of videos on our YouTube channel, and we talk about the tax, how to mitigate or avoid paying that tax by not spending 183 days in Spain when you sell your main property. Yeah.
Perfect. And your website is mylawyerinspain.com, and I think the YouTube and everything is on there as well, right?
Yes.
Yeah. Perfect. So you can all find it there. Well, thank you very much, Alex. It's been very informative.
Yeah, likewise.
Everybody, thank you for watching. So, and have a very nice rest of the day. And let's get yourself prepared, I would say.
Absolutely, yeah. Look forward to seeing you soon, Nicoline.
See you. Thank you.
Thank you, bye.